Post-diabetic is possible. Listen, please pay attention for a couple of minutes. Some really interesting things have happened recently, and I think it's really important if you or you know somebody who is type 2 diabetic. I think this is a really interesting time. Now, you may have noticed in the press recently that a member of parliament, Tom Watson, a member of parliament in the British Parliament, came out recently in mainstream press and talked about reversing his own type 2 diabetes and losing, I think, something like 7 kilograms or maybe whatever that is, 15 pounds or so. And so I want to talk a little bit about what the impact of that is and what the importance of that is, and then I really want you to share an important message, and that is that post-diabetic is possible. So first of all, let's talk about what post-diabetic means, because technically speaking, there's really only two classifications. There's pre-diabetic and then there's post-diabetic. And that's kind of bothered me for a long time, because we have so many clients from around the world that have turned around their type 2 diabetic condition by changing their relationship with food and changing their lifestyle. And so what was happening is that many of our clients were going off for their regular checkups with their doctor, and their doctor was doing their blood work and then coming out and saying, holy cow, you're pre-diabetic. And that doesn't really make grammatical sense if you think about it. Like, pre indicates before, it indicates a trend. In other words, if you are pre-diabetic, then you're kind of getting a warning that if you continue along that track, then you're going to end up with properly diabetic, and then you're going to end up requiring medical intervention, requiring medication. And so if somebody is a type 2 diabetic and then they find themselves no longer type 2 diabetic because they've turned their lifestyle around, because they've changed the relationship with food, because they've got themselves some solid food freedom, then if they are no longer diabetic, they are not pre-diabetic, they are post-diabetic. And I shared this idea with a friend of mine. I was doing an interview for WildFit with Dr. Mark and I shared with him this concept of post-diabetic, and he loved it right away. He's like, we have to use that. And so what I want to share out there in the world is the idea that post-diabetic is possible. Look, as the founder of WildFit, I'm painfully aware of a couple of things. And the one is we have to be gentle and we have to be careful about making health claims. And I think it's important that there are laws that prevent charlatans from making huge health claims. And so I'm not talking about curing anything. What I'm suggesting is that when a prominent politician, a prominent member of parliament from Britain can come out to the world and say, I have reversed my type 2 diabetes, what he is doing is saying that it's possible, that post-diabetic is possible. And so I want you to know that it is. And if you or somebody you know is dealing with type 2 diabetes, I want you to really give them some hope that it is possible, and that it is possible through a lifestyle change. It is possible through a psychology change. And I think that's a really important message. We created the hashtag post-diabetic is possible. I hope you'll share it. Let's get the message out there. Just to give you some numbers on this, just to kind of put it in perspective for you. In the 1970s, there was almost nobody in the United States under 40 with type 2 diabetes, as far as I know. It was a very uncommon situation. In fact, at that stage, it was called adult onset diabetes. And then over the course of the next several years, of the next few decades, it's become an explosion in the United States and around the world. I read recently that something like 20 million young people in America are either diabetic or under threat of becoming diabetic now. It's a massive, massive challenge. So we need to really rethink our relationship with sugar. We need to ask ourselves some questions about why sugar is in almost every kind of produced food. There's even table salt with sugar in it. There's tomato sauce that has no business having sugar. If you think you're having a little ketchup, what you're really doing is having some tomato flavored sugar. And so we really need to reevaluate our relationship with sugar, reevaluate our relationship with food, and we need to reevaluate our relationship with the concept of pre-diabetic, because post-diabetic is possible.